So let's talk about the voice. Now, not your podcast voice, the other one. The one in your head that has an opinion about everything you make. And here's what nobody warned you about that voice. You see, when you're brand new, it's loud and it's dumb and it says the obvious things. Nobody's going to listen to you. You don't know what you're doing. All those things, right? And because it's so loud and so obvious, you can see it for what it is. But if you stay in this long enough, the voice gets smarter. It stops sounding like fear and starts sounding like wisdom. It stops saying things like, you can't do this, and starts saying, well, you've been doing this for a while and look at your analytics. They're not great. So maybe this isn't your thing. That's the version I want to talk about today. The seasoned self-doubt. The one that's been with you for maybe years and has really gotten good at its job. Now, I know some of you may be saying, but wait a minute, isn't some of this just being realistic? And that's exactly what it wants you to think. So I want you to stay with me on this, because that right there, that just being realistic is the disguise. And we're going to pull that off today. So on today's episode, I'm going to name this thing pretty plainly. We'll walk through scripture because there's a man in the Bible who argued with God using a version of these words. And I'm going to give you a way to answer that actually works, even if it's years in. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Hey friend, welcome back to Christian Podcasting Secrets. I'm your host, Tammy Munson, and I am so glad that you are here today. So I want you to settle in because this is one I really want you to hear today. Now, I have tried to record this episode 4 times. So apparently something does not want me to say this today, but I'm going to say it anyway. So let's start with the truth. As you know, I've been doing this working in podcasting for a long time. 2 decades of helping women find their voice and use it. And I want you to hear me say this because I think it may set some of us free. I still hear that voice. Now, it's not every day, but it still shows up. And I'll go to say something bold, say something I know is true that I think people need to hear. Something I've earned the right to say after all this time. And then the voice pops up. Tammy, somebody's already said that way better than you can. Who do you think you are? You're too much. Maybe just soften it a little. Even though I've been doing this a while, it still knocks sometimes. What's changed is that I know that voice. I know it when I hear it. And that is the entire game. So here's the framework. I like to call it, consider the source. But here's one important thing about that voice. Before you argue with it, before you talk back to it, before you do anything, you have to ask one question. Who is talking right now? Because self-doubt in a believer is not a neutral thing. It's not just a personality quirk or a bad mood. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind." So let's look at that. God did not give you the fear. That is not a verse that says, try harder. It's a verse that tells you the return address on the fear. This did not come from him. So when that voice shows up dressed as wisdom, telling you to shrink, to soften, to quit, to wonder who you think you are, consider the source. That counsel is not coming from the one who called you. Power, love, and a sound mind. Those are his fingerprints. Shame and chaos and who are you to do this? Those are not. And once you know whose voice it is, stop negotiating with it. Don't debate the enemy. You consider the source and you keep on walking. And one of my very favorite examples of this in all of Scripture, because it was such a human thing to do, and it almost makes me laugh, And I see different versions of it all the time, even now. There's a man standing in front of a burning bush. God himself is speaking to him out loud. There's no ambiguity here. It's actually God. And God hands him the assignment of his life. And the man argues. Of course, that man's name is Moses. We all know him and love him. And here is what he says, right out of Exodus chapter 4, verse 10. "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and tongue." So basically he's saying, hey, God, listen, you've got the wrong person. My mouth doesn't work well enough for this. So in my research for this episode, Bible scholars believe that Moses may have had a real speech impediment. So most likely it's not false modesty. This is a genuine limitation, named out loud. I'm not the one. I don't sound good enough. Send somebody who is way more polished than I am. And friend, if you've been doing this a while, you may have a fancier version of that. You may say, like, I ramble. I tend to lose the thread of where I'm going with things. Have you heard other podcasters who are really good at this? That's not me. Seasoned self-doubt loves to point at the limitations we set upon ourselves and then call it a disqualification. Now watch what God does here, because it's not what we would do. He doesn't flatter Moses. He doesn't say, oh, but your voice is so amazing and you're such a good speaker. Here's what he says in verse 11. Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? There it is. Moses says, hey, my mouth's not good enough. God says, who do you think made it? That is considered the source straight from God. The voice you keep apologizing for, the one you think is too slow or too flat or too whatever, that voice was made on purpose by God, who is now asking you to use it. You are not auditioning with a voice to have to fix first. You are being sent with the one you already have. And then in verse 12, he doesn't just win the argument. He makes him a promise. Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. He didn't say, okay, come back with a better one. Instead, use the one I already made. Now go. And here's part of Moses' story we love to leave out. I love this part because it convicts me. God answers him perfectly. Case closed. And Moses, and standing right there, still says, I'm paraphrasing verse 13 now, of course. Please, Lord, send somebody else. He heard God promise to be with him, and he still asked God to pick a different person. In his mercy, God let Aaron help him speak. But if you notice, the calling never transferred. It stayed on Moses the whole time. Moses is the one that we remember. Moses is the one who stood before Pharaoh. But I always wonder about the cost of that, send somebody else. I can't do this. Because when we've been doing this for years, that sophisticated version of self-doubt, it doesn't say, I quit. It says, somebody else is already doing this way better than me, so why me? It nominates a substitute. And I want to say this because I believe it matters so much not to. When you say, send somebody else, God in his mercy often will. The message will probably still get out because his purposes don't fail. And the specific thing he wanted you to do through you, by having you be the one who spoke, you can miss that. Not because that you weren't capable, but because you asked him to send somebody else and you meant it. Now, of course, this is not guilt. Here's the grace in that. God did not disqualify Moses for being scared. He met him in it. But he also refused to agree that Moses was the wrong one. He just kept saying, go. And I believe he's saying that to us now, even if we've been doing this for a while, right now. Okay, let's get into some of the practical steps. Now, here's what I want you to do. There's 4 real moves for when that voice shows up. Okay, number 1, name it out loud and name it correctly. Don't call it being realistic. Don't call it just my mindset. Call it what it is. Say it out loud. That's self-doubt, and it did not come from God. You cannot fight the thing that you keep dressing up in respectable clothes. Name it plainly, and you take its disguise away. Number 2, consider the source, then stop negotiating. Now, once you've named it, you're going to ask the question, who is talking? If the voice is saying, shrink, soften, quit, who are you? That is not the voice of the one who called you. And here's the key. You don't argue with it. You don't build a case. You consider the source and keep moving. Debating it just keeps you in the room with it. Number 3, answer it with the mouth you were given. Right there, in that moment, say back to yourself, who made my mouth? He made that voice, the one you were just criticizing. So the next brave thing you do it in that voice on purpose without cleaning it up until it isn't yours anymore. Number 4, find your version of Aaron, but keep your calling. Sometimes we know we need help. And if you recognize that, you should definitely get it. Maybe it's an editing team. Maybe it's a co-host. Maybe it's a business coach. Maybe it's the person who can help you with all of the tech. That's wisdom. But do not hand another person the actual thing God asked you to say. Getting help is our version of Aaron. A substitute is send someone else. Know the difference and keep the thing that's only meant for you. Now, the assignment this week is to say the bold thing that you keep softening. Now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There is something you've been meaning to say, a sentence that you may kind of soften the edges a little bit, a stance you keep hedging, a truth you believe but keep serving with an apology attached to it. Because that smart, seasoned voice told you to take the edge off so nobody sends you notes. This week, don't do that. Don't take the edge off. Record the episode and say it the way you actually mean it. Full strength, in your own voice. No apology tacked on the end. That's the assignment. Not a bolder voice than yours, but your voice. Finally, not softened by a lie. So friend, here's what I know to be true. You've been doing this a little bit. You have spent hours behind the microphone, and your voice has gotten better than you actually give it credit for. And somewhere along the way, that old self-doubt got quieter and quieter and started dressing up as quote-unquote wisdom. And it's been talking you into shrinking down ever since. But I want you to hear me on this. You were never called because you were absolutely 100% qualified for the task. You were qualified because you were called. And that does not change with your downloads dropping in the month of July and August. Your podcast consumption tanked. It took you 4 times to record an episode. But God made the mouth you keep apologizing for. He's still with it. And he is still, after all these years, saying, go. So consider the source and keep speaking. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode was helpful for you. If it was, shoot me an email, tammy@wildfirecreativecompany.com, or DM us on Instagram @wildfirecreativeco. And let us know if you like our daily tips that we've been doing over there on Instagram. We'd love to hear about it. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, you can love Jesus and analytics, and life is way too short for boring podcasts. I'll talk with you next time. Bye, y'all.